Welcome to Comic Shop News. We're having Creator Spotlight, and I'm Dan. I am joined by a friend of the show, John's Comics with Kids, who has become a born-again Rodney Barnes fan. It might have been because Jen and I droning endlessly and him going, I'll catch up.
It's never too late to become a convert. It's
not
never
at all.
too late. Yeah.
Jen will be joining us a little bit late. She's got, work and stuff, and she's trying. But the man of the hour, Mr. Rodney Barnes, thank you so much for coming on. You're very busy, very busy.
I am very busy, but I'm never too busy to talk to you guys.
I love it. Just wanted to touch on it. Like yesterday, you dropped on Instagram stories, Tales from the Crypt with Snoop, Calvin Brodus, that you're working on for Zombie Love.
Yes. Well, it wasn't planned that was going to happen. I happened to be in Snoop's studio, and we had been talking about the book for quite some time, and Jason Sean Alexander oversaw the that cover being commissioned, and we sort of were talking about the design and all of that, and Snoop really loved it. And so I happened to be in the studio. He's like, so, when are we going to start talking about this thing? And I was like, well, the publicists, we got to go through, you know what, man, we're right here. Let's do it right now. And then he made the video. He posted the thing for his 70 million followers. And all of a sudden, my Substack numbers, my phone started dinging. And, within 20 minutes, I had 300 new Substack folks, and that went up to 1,000, just like that shows you the power of social media.
Right.
And then I had to repost it on my page. And then, that next morning, there was a bunch of angry publicity people saying, why did you do that?
You don't say no to Snoop.
I would never say no to Snoop. I'd rather them be mad at me than him be mad at me.
Honestly, that's the best publicity they could get, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you.
Like, seriously, with all his followers, and then, you add Snoop's star power to it, it's the best publicity you can get.
I think a lot of times comics culture, when I was coming up in the 70s and I started reading comic books, comics culture was going to the local convenience store and getting them on a spinner rack.
Spinner rack, yeah.
There was no or a liquor store. Damn near every place that sold whatever had a comic book spinner rack.
Totally.
And then when comics became sort of a comic shop thing, it sort of became a subculture of a thing and not so much a mainstream thing. And so I think now the publicity, the PR that goes with it, and how books come out on Wednesdays, and there's a culture that goes to distributing when you're starting to imprint how you should do things. And because I sort of operate on two places in the spectrum, because I sort of I do television and film, and I do comics at the same time, I operate in both spaces. And now with social media being what it is, like you were saying, you can sort of talk about a thing immediately and have an immediate fan reaction or interaction with people who read comics. You don't necessarily have to just be conventional. There's always a place for publicity and PR and interviews and stuff like that in print. But I think, when people hate something that I've done or been a part of, they tell me immediately. I don't have to wait. I get it as soon as they bought it. As soon as they read it, they can say, you know what? I hate it. I hate you. And the opposite can be true as well. If I have something that's, I'm happy about and I'm proud of, and I want to talk about it, why can't I just talk about it? So there you go.
No, I totally agree. Because
is there any way we can pause for 1 second?
Oh, totally.
All right, let's do that real quickly.
I was going to say that, Dan, you ended with that amazing...
I got to take this call.
No, you go ahead.
Hey, Rob, sorry about that.
You want put it backstage. You can.
I was in the middle of an interview,
hold on
but
one
I stopped
sec.
that interview because I saw Rob.
But like that, you ended with that image by Jason Sean Alexander of the father and the mom hugging. I was like, oh man, how do you end on that? That's like right in the feels.
because I think for me that made sense. It's an ending, like,
Yeah.
but it was such a beautiful scene. I couldn't leave that out of it.
No, how do you leave that out? Because it's just a masterpiece by Jason Sean Alexander.
Want to take a minute to say hello to some people. Inja, who is part of the gal squad of Queens in Comics. I'm going to shout her out and probably embarrass her right now. She is someone who is so uncomfortable on camera. In the last couple of episodes, she has fought and become so much better and improved. Like, there's still the nerves, but I had to send her a private message yesterday, and now I'm embarrassing her. But seriously, just keep doing it. Eventually, you'll crack, or you'll just start drinking like I do.
It's nice to have a little something to calm the nerves a bit, you know?
Yeah, but seriously, like, the improvement from the first time you did an Instagram live to the other night.
Right.
So you've improved, and I like to shout that out because you just got to keep doing it. It's like a nerve and a muscle that you keep working on, and eventually you forget about it and you'll be good. No Good Comics, so glad to see you here. I actually sent him from Amazon Comixology the first 2 trades because I was like, dude, you just got to read this. So I gifted them to him.
Nice.
Tony! Hello.
What's up, Tony?
Kim, always glad to see you on these streams. This is the first time I ever had a guest have to take a phone call, but he's in the business. So
no, he's a busy guy, man. He's got some big things on the horizon we're hoping to talk about. I was going to mention...
Waiting on Jen, so.
I was going to mention that for those that are big Killadelphia fans, big comic book fans of Rodney's, he's got a CGC signing coming up.
Yes.
So if you want to get some books signed by Rodney through CGC, now's the time to get those books sent in, because he's going to be doing one of those signature signings very soon. I want to say you got to get it in the next month, I think.
Yes, Chris Claremont also crossing into your show.
No, I thought it was amazing, though, because usually they get a ton of Marvel and DC people.
Yes.
So to see them get a great indie creator like Rodney was like, that is awesome.
And like, I'm understating it how much Rodney's got coming up. He's got his own imprint, Zombie Love, where he now has Blackula coming out. With Jason Sean Alexander, he showed roughs for the cover coming out for that. Again, Tales from the Crypt with Snoop. And busy creator. Winning Time, the Lakers biopic that's going to be on HBO Max next month.
Yeah,
which we're going to talk a little bit about because
my dad would disown me if I didn't.
My curiosity, is there someone that we wouldn't expect who ends up becoming a star of this? Like, you don't think about
comes out of it.
Yes, like, or just a character from that time that, there's stories you didn't know about that come out during this. I'd be kind of laughing if it ended up being like AC Green or somebody, or like Lanier.
When we were in junior high, my older brother went to the Byron Scott basketball camp up in the mountains, and that was his. Like, he was so pumped just to meet Byron Scott. That was like the big deal for him.
You can't go wrong with the David Mack picture. Like, you just can't.
Yeah.
Oh boy! Please don't tell me this is okay. No. Okay. Yeah. So we both ended up with CGCs of #1 of this. I got mine at a pretty good price back when it started.
I bought this. So when you told me I needed to check it out, and I read the first trade, it was so good. I hunted down a copy of this online, and then I had it pressed and cleaned and sent in, and got the 9.8 on it.
Yeah, I got a 9.8. Weirdly, Comic Campaign had a bunch of extra 9.8, so he sold it to me for 65. One again for 65. Yeah,
done.
He had a lot of them. For anybody just coming in, Rodney had to take a business call, so he will be back. And just from what I see backstage, he looks like he's got that stressed look. So
he'll get the headphones on when he's ready.
We're still waiting on Jen. So
I was just like highlighting all the panels that I was like, how do I just pick one Jason Sean Alexander section to talk about? I guess, hey, maybe useful for some people in the chat who don't know the plot of Killadelphia. So if you haven't read Killadelphia, it centers around a father and a son who are both police officers, James Sangstrom Sr. and Jr. Senior is in Philadelphia. Junior is in Baltimore. Senior gets mixed up with some unusual murders and gets killed by a vampire. Turns out it was John Adams and his coven, his collection of vampires. And son comes to Killadelphia to solve the mystery of what happened to his dad, and realizes, hey, dad's actually now a vampire and I got to work with him. So vampire dad and cop son are trying to stop the vampire invasion led by our founding fathers and mothers.
Hey, Jen, Rodney's on a phone call. He had a business call come in. So we had him for a little bit. John is filling us in on the story of Killadelphia right now.
Excellent.
Yeah. And then the spin-off series is Nita Hawes' Nightmare Blog, which follows the young cop's former girlfriend in back in Baltimore, who basically has got a kind of X-Files storyline, in my opinion. It's kind of like X-Files in the Killadelphia universe, where she's investigating some paranormal monster issues in and around Baltimore.
A little bit, and I do love. We were talking to Rodney backstage before it started, and he said that why this book's resonating with a lot more female readers is because it's actually got a female protagonist, that it focuses on where Killadelphia, with the historical figures and the patriarchy, it was hard to get in. Although we'll get to it in volume 3, we're starting to get some of the ladies coming in.
I also love they brought one of my favorite characters from Killadelphia over into the Nita Hawes universe with Anansi.
Yes, which we'll get to. Fascinating.
Easily
character.
my favorite issue so far of that run.
Also, for a spin-off book, they literally spin it off with one sentence.
Yeah.
At the end of this volume, where he's like, "Yeah, I dated this girl, Nita Hawes."
Yeah.
And
then she mentions it in one sentence in hers, and that's really it. Like, there's no need to have read one to enjoy the other. They're wonderfully independent, yet characters like Anansi the Spider God kind of like drift between both.
I think that's a good way to spin it off, so that way they're tied, but they're not tied.
Yeah.
And you could definitely, I think sometimes people are like, well, do I have to go ahead and read volumes 1, 2, 3 of Killadelphia and then read Nita Hawes? Like, I think that you could definitely read Nita Hawes and then get into Killadelphia. So,
or you just tell people, no, you get to read Killadelphia, and then you can also enjoy Nita Hawes, or vice versa.
Yes.
Well, the best thing I can ever say, volume 1 is $10 for Killadelphia, which why more companies don't do the entry level $10 book. I know you're probably
for a
taking
6-issue trade too. It's not like a 3 or a 5-issue trade. It's a full 6-issue trade.
And I think that like Image has, even there where that's kind of what they were known for, was that like $10 introductory. Like, so they've been going away from that. Some of the other ones
back to the $20 trade now.
Even if it's like a 4 or 5 volume, I feel like, or 4 or 5 issue, I feel like it's still a heavier priced. I do like that AWA books have been doing that $9.98, even though it's typically like a 4-issue miniseries that they're introducing.
Still great though.
Yeah.
AWA has been solid. They're taking chances. Some books don't hit. Aftershock is one that I wish would go to a $10. They probably won't ever, but I still think that would be a good idea for them to get more hands in.
Some of them, but not all of them. They're definitely far more where I'm seeing the $19 or $15 price tag.
Yeah, it depends on the creator name attached to it. Where I think the more unsure they are about the book, especially like Killadelphia when it came out, it had a following, but it hadn't picked up by the time the trade came out. Where like I really thought word of mouth after the trade came out is what really helped it, other than Jen and I not shutting up for 3 or 4 months.
Well, and I think it's also started to get some really great variant covers, which brought in a different crowd. The David Mack covers, the Frizen covers, and then now the Nita Hawes with those amazing Saturday Evening Post
Yeah.
variants. I mean, come
Norman
on,
Rockwell.
dude.
Yes.
Love it.
I loved again that Anansi cover where he's like rolling the dice and the spiders are all climbing off of him like an old McFarlane cover. I love it.
Also, not many people get to say that their daughter was drawn by Paul Pope.
Oh, that's true.
Brittany is Rodney's daughter in real life.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. So he
gets to watch her like fly into mobs and just eat them all.
She ripped his head off in the first trade.
That's amazing. I've got to find that image.
But yeah, so Paul Pope did a cover of her. So like
that's hilarious.
It's fascinating. Hi Sheena. Roddy's very animated. I'm watching him in the green.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
In the background. Well, he'll have to tell us what he's so excited about.
Again, this never hit. It's probably the publicity people. They weren't happy about him and Snoop putting out that video the other day about Tales from the Crypt.
Oh, let him die mad about it. That was excellent.
Yeah, because he was like, my Substack had like over 100 new people sign up in 24 hours. And then he's like, then I reposted it. And then the publicity calls came in about, what are you doing? I don't know if we should start talking about the book.
About which book?
All?
Yeah.
I was going to say Killadelphia. Do we want to start talking about Killadelphia, or do you want to talk about Nita Hawes a little bit more?
Let's talk about Nita Hawes.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully by the time we're wrapping up.
Yeah.
So Nita Hawes is kind of, the first book is heartbreaking, the first issue, because you find out about all this tragedy in her life, and she's at a table eating, and there's a young boy across from her, and you find out it's her dead brother, and you don't know if she's hallucinating or if she's haunted or what it is, and she even thinks she's crazy. And we find out more and more about her family. There is a studio where someone is, cutting a track, and boy, oh boy, like this old blues guy walks in and just starts wrecking house.
Oh man. He
And
goes
I think
bonkers.
Sean Alexander did the layouts for that with, I forget who the other artist was who also participated in it, which I got to talk to Rodney about that, because he always said that he had to basically drag Jason kicking and screaming into everything.
But if you get Jason, you get Jason.
Yeah, because even Elysium Gardens, he said like it was a fight to get him to do it.
Yeah. So I'm glad we got it.
Yes, especially the way it wrapped up into that last issue of Killadelphia. But Nita Hawes is such a different vibe from everything else.
Yeah.
As Rodney said, in Killadelphia, there's just not enough female characters in it because you have all these historical characters and patriarchy, except for the people who come from Greece and Africa, which we will get to, or Roman Africa, which I'm fascinated by the witch, but we'll get to that. But Nita was in a relationship with Jimmy, and she says how he used to call it Bodymore, but then he goes to Killadelphia.
Yep.
And they make jokes about that. And John and I think most of our reference to Baltimore is from watching The Wire.
I mean, understandably.
One of the things, thinking about the the specific language that was used. I don't know if either of you have watched Abbott Elementary.
No.
Oh my goodness, it's fantastic. It's completely unrelated. It's like The Office, but in inner city school in Philadelphia. And it goes into a little bit of the language and the lingo that's used specifically in Philly. And it's fantastic.
Nice.
Excellent.
Yeah, Philly, definitely. I remember the first time we had it where, in particular, Mars was picking out a certain line that was used in
John.
that Kevin used. Yeah, that's my John, my joint. and I it was one of those things where I probably wouldn't have picked out, but she like focused on that, and I was like, boy,
Right.
he does use that a lot.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, whenever Seesaw is speaking, he has a real distinct lingo to his verbiage.
And we got Rodney back.
Awesome.
Yes,
Hey.
thank you. I had and hello, Jennifer. I had
Hello.
it was a winning time conversation that I had to take. And
Oh, 100%. You look very animated in the green room. So
It was a spirited conversation that went relatively well, and I'm back. Thank you.
I hope you told them. I hope you told them who's boss.
Well, no, that's I wish I could have. It would have been a quicker conversation, but apologies for that 10-minute delay or whatever it was. I'm back.
We're gonna give you shit like you did the first.
Andrew, that was good, Andrew. I was looking for Andrew. Andrew has never come back.
Won't come back. He'll never come back.
Come on, Andrew. I love you,
So,
Andrew. If you're watching this, Andrew, I love you.
I wanted to show you this. This is someone who is a new reader to your stuff and loves
thank you.
Nita. She is one of the best fans you could ever get. Like she is passionate. She is now got her own show that she's on, Queens in Comics, where they're doing Saga right now.
Yes.
And
yes.
there is a very strong community, and like I said, there's all these new readers picking up your stuff now. So it's great for me, like as someone who is championing you along with Jen, seeing all these ladies now picking up Nita Hawes and
so good.
now falling in love with your writing.
Oh yeah,
Thank you. Kids are coming next. It's later.
I was gonna say,
Well, it's incredible.
As a dad of two daughters, I want to see more ladies represented reading comics.
Yes,
I think it can be such a patriarchal, hobby sometimes.
It is. No, I have a mini series at Image called Monarch, and it'll be hopefully coming later in the late summer. And it's kids. It's kind of like Lord of the Flies meets War of the Worlds, but in Compton. So, so there you go. There you go.
Nice.
You say it's for kids, but I assure you, I will be picking it up 100%.
Well, yes, it does have adult themes as far as betrayal and intrigue, and it's a bunch of things that basically how trauma affects kids and how they have to work to overcome it because they don't process it in the same way adults do.
Yeah,
so it's more empathetic to the difficulty in being a kid. And the world that we've kind of created for kids that they have to grow up really, really fast. But it feels more young adultish, but what I've read a lot of young adult stuff and for research and wanted to jump in and do a book like Quincredible to a degree, but a little more violent because aliens are blasting people. So Quinn can't be hurt. So, and I have one more volume of Quincredible, actually script number 6. The last one is sitting there within arm's reach.
Look at it. Go ahead and read it for us.
Well, you don't want to read it yet. You got to give me at least 2 more days, and then maybe it'll be good.
I've been picking up your Army of Darkness book, and it seems like you're having an incredible time writing Ash because you can be so loose with him and kind of ridiculous.
Well, it's on the spectrum of Rodney Barnesism, of Nita, and of Killadelphia. They're so serious, and even though there's some jokes from time to time, it's more dark humor.
Sure.
Here, you can just be goofy, and it really doesn't have a plot. It really is just Ash doing things and making jokes and observations in the 70s when I was alive and remember some aspects of it, unfortunately. And so it's like, I'm just having fun with it. And
that's great.
I've got to ask, and I wore the shirt to represent.
There it is.
When are you going to be writing Swamp Thing for us?
DC Comics. Only DC Comics and whatever editor. And Ram is doing such a great job on it.
He
right
is.
Now. I would not want to take anything away from Ram, but a mini series to go with his resurrection of the popularity of Swamp Thing wouldn't be a bad thing. So
I like the new take on the mythology, how he kind of changed it up a bit, and
found a way to get around that Alan Moore curse. Of greatness, and that's the problem when you do something that's really, really great. It's hard for generations to come in and do it better, but I think Ram has done a fantastic job.
Jen bought the first appearance of Swamp Thing
I did.
CGC book of it.
Wow.
Not a high grade, but
No, it's a low
Wow.
grade, but it is House of Secrets 92. I had to, that was like the one book I needed. And when you start writing Swamp Thing, I'm going to have you sign it.
Ooh,
That House
You
of
don't
Secrets
even have
92.
to. Come on. I will send it. I am happy to sign it.
No, I'm going to have you sign my House of Secrets 92
I'll sign
when
it.
you start writing
I'll sign-
Swamp Thing.
I will sign anything you want me to sign.
Sign it all.
You guys
Hey.
are so supportive of me. I am. Thank you, Bradley. I am happy to sign whatever you want me to sign.
Love it. And speaking of the Snoop Dogg,
yeah.
Tales from the Crib, man.
Yes. As I was telling the guys before you hopped on, that really happened with. I happened to be in Snoop's studio, and we were talking about other things that we're doing, and he was like, "What's up with the book?" And I said, "Well, I'm working on a book." He's like, "But we got that, that dope ass cover and blah blah blah. Why can't we tell people?" And I said, "Well, the publicist and the this," and he's like, "Man," and he just got on Instagram and started talking and posted the cover. And so I'm like forced to post the cover now and repost his video. And the next morning, publicists were angry with me. People were angry with me. And I'm like, I can't. What? You don't tell that guy. Wait a minute now. I don't want this. If it comes down between a publicist being mad at me or Snoop being mad at me, I choose the publicist.
Yeah.
So there you go.
My favorite part of that short video is just you in the background kind of smiling like, uh-oh.
Well, and here's the thing. It was 2 a.m.
Oh.
My bedtime is right around 9:17.
Same.
Somewhere in there. And there's a certain age, and I'm at that age where there's nothing good that happens after 10 o'clock in the day. Law and Order SVU, which I actually DVR, is the only good thing that happens after 10 o'clock. And I go to bed. So when he called, well, we were texting, and it was midnight when he said, "Come on down." So this is so rare because he's doing the Super Bowl, he's doing an All-Star game, he's about to do a tour. So I know this is my window of opportunity to get caught up. Yes, there you go. And to get caught up on all things Snoop is like right now. And I took my opportunity and drove down there and made that video. And all of a sudden I have all of these new Substack folks that I didn't have before who have gone to my Instagram page. Thank you all, and gone on Substack, and there you go.
Will Tales from the Crypt be specifically on Substack, or will
No,
it be?
it'll be on Zombie Love Studios. And so my own imprint that has Blackula and a couple of other books and Crownsville and a few other things that'll just be trades, like those Killadelphia trades that are behind you. So it won't be floppies.
Nice.
And it'll just be the full story and, bunch of, hey, Kim, and it'll be a bunch of, just cool stories, fun stories, Snoopisms, and those things.
I gotta ask, because I saw the Blackula stuff that you posted the other day from Sean. I remember you saying you had to drag him kicking and screaming to Elysium Gardens.
I did.
How did you get him Nita Hawes and now this?
You don't want to. Well, he did layouts for Nita Hawes. Patrick Reynolds and Well B did the first Nita Hawes books. And he did those great covers, the Norman
The Saturday
Rockwell.
Evening Post.
Yeah, those were fantastic.
Lights out.
And so anytime now, Jason has a certain bandwidth when he's explained this to me. I haven't completely accepted it, so I'm still angry whenever he becomes this guy. But he has a limit to his attention span as to how long he can keep drawing the same characters. And I don't care. My work is better when Jason Sean Alexander is a part of it in any way, shape, or form. So I will guilt him. I will physically threaten him. I know where he lives. I will say mean things about him. Whatever it takes for him to remain in my life and in my work life, I will continue to do. If you guys can see how beautiful Blackula is, I can tell you that in the last 3 months, Jason's work is the best I've ever seen it. He's coloring it as well. He's doing everything.
That's high praise.
And it's incredible. This is not hyperbole to get people to buy the book. This isn't the typical, this is a great book, go buy it because it's great.
Well, I feel like he's been on that trajectory. You look at the stuff in Killadelphia Volume 3, where you had like some of the spiritual elements with traveling through space and time.
I wish I could. Yes.
He was blowing it out of the water there.
There were great splash pages in Volume 3.
What a great trajectory he's been on.
And I did, all of those pages were scripted because I'm a fan of Jason's. And I would say, I remember I was in the Sistine Chapel and snuck a picture of the ceiling because you're not supposed to take pictures. But I held the camera down and acted like I was just walking. And I saw this one shot and I said, man, I wonder if I could get a shot like that in Killadelphia. And I would just write it and do like a double splash page because I want this to be a piece of art that I make him give me. And a lot of those splash pages is just me being a fan of Jason's and wanting to see Jason's work in a certain way. So Blackula is all of that. It is everything. The idea of Blackula for me was to elevate the idea of Blackula beyond the blaxploitation era into today's world and put him on equal footing as Dracula in a classy kind of way. That the themes weren't just about race and it wasn't just about the idea of race. That really, he was a vampire in the classic sense and he was betrayed, and anger, hurt, pain, the themes that I revisit on a regular basis, I wanted to put into Blackula. And so Jason, I think, as well as any artist, interprets emotion and that feeling. And in order, you can have that story, but if the artist isn't able to interpret it in that way, it sort of falls flat. And Jason and I have a thing, and I'm going to make him do it. Well,
I was going to mention some of those themes that you seem to touch on a lot, as far as like family trauma, poverty and class, religion, history, race, conflicts, and then vampires, things that could potentially suck the life out of you, right? Figuratively or literally, but then also for certain characters of yours, like empower them. Like how do you balance all that thematically in all the things you do?
When I choose, when I'm writing a book, I usually find a theme, one word, like what is this story going to be? Certainly in a book like Killadelphia now that has thousands of characters and you're trying to service all of them. Whenever I usually do a big A story, a B story that sort of runs concurrent with it, and sometimes a C runner that's with it. Unless I have a really big A story or, that dominates the entire thing. Sure. But I try to find themes within those stories that feel similar so that the experience of reading the book is a singular, even if it's different characters, they're going through things that are relatable. So even sometimes I can add voiceover from one story that bleeds into another story because they're talking about the same things and they're feeling the same things, so that you don't lose that other story because of this story, because they're going through the same stuff. And anger, hope, love, rage, guilt, shame, I revisit them because I think all of them are born from, except the positive ones, from trauma. And if you can, trauma doesn't go away easily, certainly, even if you're immortal. And that was one of the curses to me, that a lot of the habits we have in adulthood were born in childhood trauma. So what if I was immortal and I had to keep regurgitating those habits of childhood trauma, even though I'm 600 years old or I'm whatever? And it sort of raises to me, there's no therapy for vampires because you probably fight the therapist. Or there's not a school you can go to become a vampire therapist. So you're sort of stuck with either self-actualization like Seesaw. Like Seesaw sort of is on his own evolution and curiosity. He has a level of self-awareness.
Because he's like the youngest. He seems like the youngest character, but like has so much more wisdom than the elders.
But he has this opportunity that wasn't available to him before, where he can go sit with Muhammad and
the thing is, I think with Seesaw, he's not limited to a lot of the older characters. or sort of trapped in when they came up, the idea of who they were in history and all of that. So they're sort of locked into the ego space of who they see themselves as being.
Totally.
Seesaw doesn't necessarily have that. What Seesaw had in his life was the trauma in seeing what happened to his grandmother and his mother and his father, and not being able to self-actualize because he was too desperately trying to survive. I got to get money. I got to hustle. I got to do this. And when you're in that state, and I think this is universal to people who are struggling emotionally, economically, in whatever way, you're fighting for that. And that stifles your ability to sometimes be your best self because you're too busy trying to survive physically. Sure. And to keep a roof over your head or to take care of children or whatever the thing is, you're so burnt out from that exercise that it's difficult to sit back and ponder and brood and meditate and do all of those things that are necessary in order to self-actualize and really get to know yourself. And so Seesaw, now he's made the most out of being a vampire. He's made the most out of, the book that he wasn't supposed to be able to read or understand, but he was supposed to just protect it. And, he's taken that and become his best self. And in Arc 4, he really gets an opportunity to become his best self in a way that sort of changes the course of his character for the entire series. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. I want to take a minute to give Jason a little bit of appreciation. When I first saw his art when he started on Spawn, the first time he really popped on my radar, I was like, okay, he's like Ashley Wood and Sienkiewicz, like a bastardized version of both. But he's managed to now find his own kind of best self. And maybe it's because he's more comfortable now doing the characters on here, but I see better facial expressions than I've seen a lot of people draw, and he's doing a great job of balancing being a cartoonist and an illustrator, where he's doing these amazing splash pages, but then on the other pages he's still moving the story. And it's a great balancing act to do, and just the progression, seeing from issue to issue him getting better. And I know you don't want his ego getting stroked any more than it already is.
Because he's already trying to leave me. I think I mentioned that. And I don't want that to happen. And it's like, it's almost like, when you've been dating someone who wants to leave and they just feel sorry for you, so they hang around longer. I'm hoping that he has some semblance of empathy, or sympathy would work as well. And he'll just stay. But I see him becoming this other thing. And there might be a Dateline episode where or he'll just have to submit to my will. One or the other, one of the two will have to happen.
We had to tell John before that your daughter is actually Brittany.
I didn't know this.
That's so my bad Brittany, who I'm supposed to call. But yes, my bad Brittany.
So invite her on.
She has Paul Pope doing art of her, which Paul Pope is one of Jen and I's favorite artists, and she got a cover by him.
So good.
And I'm going to out her that she hasn't read the book. She has not read the book. And, for the conversation, the way this conversation started, Daddy, why can't I be in one of your books too? You're in the book and you won't read the book. I'll send her like pictures, and she ripped my head off in issue 5. And still nothing. Oh, that's cool. That's a cool picture. That's cool. Yeah, great. Okay, bye. And won't read the book. If it was on Instagram, she'd probably read it. If Kim Kardashian was reading it, she'd read it. But if her father writes it, she won't read it. So
isn't there a Killadelphia World Instagram? They just post stuff.
I wish. I wish I would out her more publicly if I could, but I love her too much.
We're talking about bloodsuckers. You got to have some wine with that.
They're drinking blood out of wine glasses.
I'm drinking sugar-free Kool-Aid, or Crystal Light. So there you go.
So the way that Killadelphia Volume 2 ended with the "Honey, we need to talk."
Yes.
And then you start this interview with the vampire, where I called out immediately, like, "Oh my God, Thomas Jefferson is Lestat." Holy shit.
Picked up that. Huh. Yeah.
There was no way not to. And Anne Rice had just passed away, so it was on my mind quite a
The
bit.
late great Anne Rice, who another big influence. I think Richard Matheson, Anne Rice.
You did a shout out to him too.
Yeah, they they're all huge influences for me.
But just Thomas Jefferson. I text John last night rereading, and I was like, Thomas Jefferson's an asshole. I can't stand this motherfucker. And then the next thing is, if Lance Reddick isn't playing James Sangster Sr., I don't know, because all I hear is Lance Reddick's voice being disapproving but smiling at you as he's being an asshole.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I don't know his comedy.
We're huge Wire fans.
Yes, as am I. As am I. But that's Nita. Nita's more of in the Wire world. But
yeah, right.
Yes. Also, with you growing up in Annapolis, I'm sure that was kind of interesting.
In the Nitaverse, I do a lot of Maryland shout outs to Annapolis and places I know. I mean, I think, my work became better when I began to speak more from me. Not so much literally my hometown and those things, but things I know, things I feel, things that I believe philosophically, and things that I've come to understand, I think, in a better way. And so trying to infuse them in Killadelphia is one thing, but since Nita was set in Baltimore, because I wanted to, every major city, even if they have economic problems, they have their own unique culture and the way that they manifest themselves and the way that people speak and the way that people interpret their problems. So between the big city Killadelphia universe with Killadelphia and Philadelphia, Nita and Baltimore, and 20 Degrees Past Rigor in Flint, Michigan, they all sort of have a different take on how the trauma that comes with poverty and social ills and all of that manifest themselves.
I'm a big history nerd and love the way you've given me this fun view into what we all wish we could have, which is an opportunity to ask some of those people creating those founding documents, what would you think looking at it in reverse from 2022, looking back? So you get these moments where John Adams or Thomas Jefferson are reflecting, looking back, this huge amount of time. How do you balance what you wish that they could learn versus what you want them to say as a character, right?
I try to be empathetic to them because if I judge them as good or bad,
right,
then they become caricatures.
Exactly.
And they're not people anymore. So I try to take what I've come to learn about them in research, and I try to apply a personality trait, and then I try to apply a purpose, what's under that personality trait, why are they that way? And then I try to take that and bring it into a modern day. So they still kind of, it's like religion. Whatever the first religion, my first religion, Christianity, was the first thing that was I was exposed to as a kid. So when I encountered other religions when I was going through life, I immediately compared them to Christianity because that's the thing, measuring stick, and mostly that I know. So whether it's Buddhism or Taoism or any ism, no Snoop, you haven't missed Snoop. He's not coming up. But I wish he was. I wish he was. That would mean I'm not here stuck in this office. And so I think because these founding fathers did what they did, and their significance was larger back in the day when they were famous for what they did. Of course. They still compare today's world to yesterday's world. And it's hard for them to get out of that because that's their reset to how things should be. They accept that things have evolved. And I think John and Abigail's marriage suffers from that because Abigail has tasted freedom and power now, whereas in a patriarchal dynamic, women didn't necessarily have that. Right. So he's still holding on to I'm your husband and sort of kind of you're supposed to listen to me. And she's like, I'm stronger than you. I'm tougher than you. I'm a better strategist than you. Why would I bow down to you?
She has that line. For 200 years, I walked behind you in a world ruled by men. With your death, I was free. How dare you return?
Yes. So, but it's true. It's to the point. If there was love, if it was just a relationship based on love and some degree of like both people working to self-actualize the other and some equity, then I think they would be able to find marriage and find some semblance of peace. But because John is still, even though he doesn't think he is, he's still holding on to who he was and who they were. And, you know, they had kids during that period of time, and he was president and she was first lady. And, you know, that's a pretty big deal in American history for both of them. And so your ego is sort of, there's a comedian friend of mine, I won't say his name, but you know who he is. And he has a joke that says that guys' fashion sense stops in the era where they have the most sex. So whatever their style was, like if it was the 70s, they dressed like the 70s forever.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right. So they stay in that place because that was the place where they felt the most them. And so that's sort of where I think John is. He has a different suit and he's a little skinnier than he was before. But, you know, I was president. You know, only how many guys? 45, 46 guys could say that in the history of America. And, you know, damn it, I was number 2. You know, come on, give me some love.
But he's also got a really interesting arc across these 3 trades where I feel like his evolution through Seesaw, obviously, in a big way.
And his wife kicked his ass a couple of times. So it's like you know, it's a humbling. It's hard to come home and, you know, make my dinner after your wife has just beat your ass and there's nobody to report it to.
You can be the big man out there, but not at home.
Exactly. You know, I can beat you. So just, you know, act right. And he you know, he snivels and I'm sorry, but it's too late. You should have thought of that 200 years ago.
I think his time in limbo, though, where he started reflecting on, you know, he actually had some contrition where he's like, I did this and I was against it, but I never stopped it.
Yeah, all of that. But Abigail hasn't gone through that. She's pretty still pissed off.
Thomas Jefferson was like looking back on, he's like, yeah, I mean, I could have, but nah, like, I love my slaves. I let them free eventually.
Figuratively and literally.
In quotes, a relationship with one. And, you know, even she said when she was with Abigail, how can it be a relationship when I'm property? So there is no real relationship.
How can there be consent, right?
Yeah, how can there be any of those things? Yes, all of that.
I thought John was contrite, where like he literally was introspective, where Thomas was just like, well, yeah, but that's just the way it was.
Exactly.
You know, and Thomas Jefferson, like, he's such a fucking asshole in this. Like, you wrote him in a way that made me hate him so much. Like, even the fact that after he's undead, he finds Sally and then negs her going, well, stuff's never going to get better for you.
Exactly.
Like, so come back home to me.
I mean, this is still your best bet. I mean, think about it. You can go out in the world and be black and see how that's going to work. And, and you know, and she's like, you've learned nothing. You've learned this is bad.
I was like full of rage. I'm reading it going, you motherfucker. And then he becomes a freaking Woodstock 60s band.
Well, and I actually kind of like that.
Well, he's not hiding. That's the Lestat thing where he's like in his leather pants. And I'm like,
yes. If I could go back and do like a one shot of him in the 60s and just tell
his Jim Morrison days.
Yeah, just one of those stories where he's that guy. And because the biggest thing with him is he needs to be loved and validated. He needs to be his narcissistic fuel. He needs that thing. And he's not getting it anywhere. Because one of the things about being a vampire is you sort of have to stay behind the scenes. You know, if you come out publicly too much, you're going to be discovered. And why aren't you getting older? You know, and why does your band keep changing? You know, because you're eating them. You know, you're drinking their blood or whatever. So, yeah.
I mean, there's even things where he's just walking. He's like, you know, John would be a great, you know, vice president. I mean, I was always smarter. Yeah. And then he's telling Abigail.
Right? Yeah.
He's telling Abigail, like, you'd be a great mistress of warfare. And she goes, no. you're not listening to me. This is
Yes.
not how it's going to be.
Yes.
And again, showing the whole patriarchy thing where he's just refusing to listen to her, even when Toppy's like, hey man, like, I want her to stay like this. She's pissed.
She's the leader that we sort of need. She's the best. And he's like, yeah, well, whatever. Sure.
Yeah, like I'm fascinated by it because like she's just destroying people. Like she literally ripped off someone's head and was drinking blood out of their skull, which was one of the greatest pictures.
Yeah, that was a Jason. I described it, but Jason has done it before, I think, because he actually knew how to do it in a way. I try to do that with the kills because, vampire kills are basically bites in the neck. And there's been so many times that you can bite someone in the neck.
We will definitely get to winning.
We will
time.
be talking about that.
Yes, winning time. Yes. So yeah.
Also, the way you mixed in the historical characters, where you have Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and when he's explaining things aren't going to get better, and you're kind of doing the cutaways, and they show her kind of like Sally smack him away, and he's still just not getting it, even to the fact of, well, I don't want to be alone, so I'm going to do some horrible shit to my family and bring them back as like zombies, basically.
Because his whole life seems to be to try to get back to that place, right?
Yes,
To get
and
back
to have
that.
followers and to have a court and have people who look at him as Thomas Jefferson, not as Thomas. He needs to be worshipped. He needs to be the guy that everyone's looking at. And, where am I going to get that narcissistic fuel? And so even in zombies, like they'll follow him, they'll walk with him, they won't judge him. They'll just kind of walk around. But then good old Jupiter put a stop to that.
Oh,
I mean, that sequence with Jupiter and him reuniting, the roller coaster ride, like I almost feel like you could have done an entire trade of that emotional roller coaster.
I wanted to.
How did you condense it all into those pages?
It's Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, it is. That's
totally
exactly
is.
what it is. And a few people were mad at me because they wanted the obvious thing to happen. They wanted like, he should kick his ass and he should do that. And I'm like, that's sort of not how it worked. If you think about, from 1619 when slaves first came and the mind job, not just the physical brutality, but the psychological tactics that were used to take a healthy mind and twist it. Right. That's basically what's been done to Jupiter. And even though there are moments of, when he was going through his evolution, trying to find his power, that doesn't mean it's sort of like addiction, where anyone who's been addicted to a thing, you go back to it oftentimes when you fall off the wagon, whenever anxiety, depression, stress, when that button is pushed. And I think for people who have experienced deep trauma, you want to push those feelings down. You don't want that to come up. And it's a natural human response to protect your mind. It's like you're trying not to go crazy. So I have to find something to soothe this wound. And in Jupiter's character, he sort of represents the trauma of slavery manifested in a way that where he can speak to it directly. I think there's a cultural dynamic that still exists today within the infrastructure of America, where you see poverty and you see a lot of the ills of history sort of still haunting us to this day. But they don't necessarily have a voice. They have behavior and violence, but they don't have a voice. And I wanted Jupiter to be that voice that's why he starts with mass incarceration. And
I was mad at Jupiter. I was really mad.
Yeah. Well, it's that thing where I think, we don't always do the things that are in our own best self-interest. We want to, and in our logical minds, we all are probably gurus to ourselves. But when the time comes to face the thing and the difficult decision, we don't always do that.
My daughter just for her 5th grade project had to do a report on an American revolutionary hero or character, and she chose Samuel Adams. And on his second marriage, he was a staunch abolitionist, did not believe in slavery. he was gifted a slave at his second wedding. And they wanted to free the slave, and the slave refused because they're like, where do I go? What could I possibly do? In America right now, the slave made a profoundly logical decision, but was like, my family's been split apart. They're mostly dead. Like, so they ended up keeping the slave, but Samuel Adams wrote all about how it was like hard for him to be having this person in their house when they felt a certain way. And they were like, we wanted to free the slave made a similar decision to Jupiter.
And even going north, during slavery didn't mean that you were going to safety.
Right.
Like,
yeah, they were in
everybody
Boston.
loved the idea that everything is great because it wasn't. I'm writing another book for my Substack page called The Butcher of Black Bottom. It's a serial killer story set in the 1920s in Black Bottom, Detroit. And, it's, in short, it's about these people who have migrated from the South during Reconstruction, and they're having problems with the Irish, and there are these gangs that are coming in, and they don't like the idea of Black workers integrating the auto plants of the time. And then tensions are high, and these killings start in the Black community, and who's doing it? But it stokes the fires of almost giving this idea that just because you're north, south, wherever, the people who have those attitudes and those ideas, it's not necessarily regional as much as it is psychological. And there was no real safe place unless you're around people who have your best interests at heart.
The thing that bothered me most about that is Thomas's answer when Jupiter's like, you sold my family, my wife and my children. He goes, that was 200 years ago. Like, let it go. And I'm just like,
which is so hypocritical, right? Because so many of these characters can't get over their 200-year-old garbage.
Yeah, it's like, he's still mad over that. I had a guy say that to me one time, a director, and he had done this really, really shitty thing. And I saw him one time. He's like, hey, man, how you doing? He wanted to give me a hug, and I had this look on my face. He's like, come on, man. You're not still mad over me. Come on. That was how many years ago? That was like 2 years ago. Come on. So I just added 2 zeros behind the 2.
There you go. Are you going to write him into the book, the director?
No. He has some Thomas Jefferson traits and qualities, so he's in a good place.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and not just like thinking about like these characters and when we transplant them into our world now, but maybe like the way that the world now treats these historical figures looking back, like we still maybe in my opinion, idolize them a little bit too much. Like I hate Thomas Jefferson a lot, even though he's probably one of my favorite presidents to read about, but I fucking hate him. Like, so I think that, that's one thing that I love about this series is that it's not just about like obviously in Killadelphia, but it's this huge historical, like you mentioned on the first time that we talked with you, that it's about like what does it mean to have this perspective of 200 years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think, to the people who, again, are critical of the book, they would say, that's kind of preposterous that a president or whatever, because it's a president. And I'm like, it's a human being. And regardless of what title we give, a person, they're still a person, and even if it's a leader, they still have flaws and faults and all of these things. If I became the president of Hollywood, I would still have the same issues. I'd still want to eat too many carbohydrates. I'd still be impatient. I still have my neurotic, thank you very much. I still have the same issues that I have now. I just have a different responsibility. And I think when you canonize historical figures, regardless of who they are, and you don't see the humanity within them, which means their flaws within them, I don't think you're actually giving them the credit that they do, that they were actually able to overcome some of those issues and do some good stuff in spite of their flaws. And I think it's a message to all of us that within us is someone who could probably overcome those things if you try, but there's greatness and goodness in everybody. But that doesn't mean you're perfect. Even if you're Mother Teresa, you have some stuff. And, but history has a way of sort of writing it, this romantic love letter to the future of who this person was. And I'm sure that at some point they had some issues as well.
Because wouldn't that teach them the lessons that made them Mother Teresa in
Yes,
the first
exactly.
Place, right?
And
Because how do you get there without that?
We're built on history. Our society and the world is built on history. And if you don't, and you look at the problems we have today, there are a lot of things that weren't addressed along the way in the formation of America. And, you know, as America continued to evolve, that I think, you know, had those things been addressed in a healthy way, we'd always have problems. You're human beings, you're always going to have problems, but not the same types of problems in the same way. And it's like, shit, everybody has them.
I literally was reading this last night, doing a reread, and I was looking at the Vampire Uprising. I was like, all right, well, I remember Jefferson was a Federalist, so would the Republican Party consider this a legal political discourse or a legitimate political discourse or not? Like, I'm unsure. We met with you a year ago, right after we actually had the January 6th insurrection.
Yes. That's in there. That's in one of the issues. I have a
yes,
couple panels
the QAnon shaman is in one of the
he's
flashbacks.
In one of them. Yeah, he's in one of them. I don't remember which one.
I just remember him being in there. I was like, ooh, boy.
I loved it because, again, you're tying in all these great... We're in an era of history, whether we acknowledge it or not.
Yes,
so, like,
and I'm not
to
judging
realize it. No, exactly. But to just recognize that it's all continuing to happen.
That it's happening. And I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm leaving as much Rodney out of it as I possibly can. And I'm just saying that this is who we are. This is what we do. And these vampires, you know, I think immortality and perspective sort of makes you a voyeur. You start to observe things, and you have no choice as you get older, as unfortunately I am. You start to look at your life in a completely different way. You start to reflect. You know, it's something that happens, I think, almost instinctually, because pretty soon you're not going to exist. And what would happen if I wasn't going to die and I was potentially going to live forever, and I had to reflect on massive things? I was listening to Joe Rogan's apology for some of the things that he had said. Shortly
his new one is.
Yeah,
his new one
he was talking about that. And again, not judging Joe. And, you know, he was talking about how at a certain period, some of these things were acceptable and commonplace. I remember watching on Good Times in Sanford and Son, they'd use the N-word. And this was on network television and in prime time. And, you know, to his point, time changes. If you try to apply today's thinking to yesterday's thinking, even if that behavior was abhorrent, but if that was the way of the world, it was deemed at that time as normal. And it's difficult to judge it in the same way. Yeah, it could be wrong. It could be completely wrong and not justifying it. But the people at that time sort of saw it as the way things were. You know, at a certain time, slavery was legal. You know, at a certain time, women couldn't vote. You know, at a certain time, gay people, you know, et cetera. There were internment camps for Asians. And all of these things were legal. And now we live in a time where we're trying to be more progressive and, you know, whatever. But, you know, I think healing comes from acknowledging. You know,
or
if
you
you
just
can
ban the books
acknowledge-
about it.
Yeah, and what I try to do with Killadelphia is to present a picture. I try to present that this is our society. The vampires are observing it, judging it. Some think this way, some think that way. But it's not even a conservative liberal thing. You know, they think the way that they do based upon the characteristics that I try to give them. And I think all of us should be looking at society in that way, and not so much how it makes us feel, you know, the polarized thing. I see this is good, I see that is bad, but seeing it for what it is, not so much for what we want it to be.
I mean, the more I read this, the more I think Tevin is our POV.
He is. He is. He's neutral. You know, he's neutral, and he just wants freedom. He wants everyone to feel the way that he feels so that they will leave him alone. It's like, if you're happy with you, you're less apt. Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And I'm less apt to come after you or try to do something or hurt you if I'm happy with my own life. And usually when you try to put systems to people, you know, you try to force them to believe in a religion or force them into a political party or force your views onto somebody else, invariably you're going to find somebody that disagrees with you. And in that disagreement, there have been wars that started over people looking at different gods or wanting to live different lifestyles or wanting to do things that are different. And everybody has the right to, we're all going to live and we're all going to die. You got the right to do whatever you want to do as long as you're not hurting somebody. And I think, you know, that is sort of an ideology that not a lot of folks, they probably, if you were to ask them individually on the street, they'd say, of course, until someone's doing something that they disagree with. And that's sort of at the heart of Killadelphia. If you look at each character, they sort of have the sangsters, you know, as long as Jimmy's behaving in a certain way that James Sr. agrees with, they're on the best of terms. Right. As soon as he does something different, it's like he's an idiot. They all have their own things and their own stuff. And my hope is that, you know, I'm able to bring it to a satisfying conclusion when the time comes.
Is that conclusion anytime soon?
No. Okay. There's a big Arc 4 shifts the series in a major way. Thank you. If it shifts, it takes a series. I always wanted, and I don't plot these two, like I may be doing a mini series at Marvel coming up soon, and I have to heavily plot it because you know, they run on a different system than indie comics. Right. And I don't really like doing that because I like the idea with Killadelphia. I have a loose idea of where it starts, where the beginning, the middle, and the end of an arc. I know where I want it to go, but there are times when if it feels too slow when I'm actually writing the book, I say, you know what? I need to switch some stuff up. And I like being able to change on the fly. And like I said, right now I got werewolves, I got a witch, I got vampires, I got all kinds of vampires. And I have to sort of service everybody. And some of these characters, like the werewolves and the witch, are new. And I've got 2 new characters coming in that are really big historical figures. Ooh. And I got to service them too. Yeah, it's sort of like the X-Men. And there's a problem with, you know, it was funny with the Claremont run, the early one with John Byrne, that they were able, the brilliance of those is that they took the relationships of, you know, whether it was Kitty Pryde and Colossus or Wolverine, Jean Grey, and Cyclops, and Cyclops.
Went on a lot of vacations.
And they would do things, they would go off with Sauron or whoever, and they would do a thing that sort of could focus. And even the Legion of Superheroes, there's 1 million of them, at least 1 million of them. I counted them one time. It was 1 million of them. And you know, God bless, you know, the new Legion of Superheroes. But I remember one time turning the page, and every page had like 40 of them on the page. And it was really, really hard for me to follow because I'm old and my attention span isn't very good. And it was really, really hard for me to invest in the way that I used to when Mike Grell was doing the book when I was a kid. And it was like 5 Legionnaires. And somebody made Superboy bad, or Superboy was bad, and he beat up Mon-El, and you know, Lightning Lass would come in, and like 2 people would come in and fight, and then at the resolution, all the Legionnaires would come in and say, "What happened?" And then you would see those 40 on the last page, but they weren't all the way through. And whatever was on the cover, you know, whoever was on the cover, that was basically who the story was going to be. And I'm still sort of trained, whether it's the Avengers, with any group book, I really only want 4 people in it. Like the great Justice League series of the one Dwayne McDuffie did. Great at singling out 4 or 5 characters and giving them an adventure, and maybe they would have a meeting, in the tower and the thing. But for the most part, it was really only about a few characters, and maybe it's I have ADD and my attention span is good enough to hold on to more 4 or 5 characters at a time.
McDuffie had so many great episodes he did of
Incredible.
Justice League. And I mean, the documentary on him that was on the Justice League Doom animated disc, I recommend anybody go back and watch, because like it literally made me cry at the end. I'm not even lying. Like he was so important, and he fought the whole way through with Milestone, just pushing what he wanted to do, and like he had pushback constantly. I remember there was one cover where they basically were insinuating Static had sex, and DC went berserk about it, and it wasn't long after that where he still pushed the cover through that Milestone kind of stopped.
But again, he was able to do it in the series in a way that I felt was incredibly fantastic. Big loss. I miss him.
Very much so. Also, from what I heard, he was a very large man. Like he was 6'4", 6'5".
Yes, he was almost my height. Almost. But yes.
So one of my favorite things here, and it's just Tevin being Tevin, is when he meets Jesus being resurrected.
Oh man, I love that he went right there. Like, it's such a great moment when he was,
and also regionally correct.
Right, and he did it. He did it in such a way, and the purpose behind it was that thing that I said before about me, that Jesus is, it was my guy when I was 6 years old, and that was all I knew, and and I've found a few guys along the way, and Jesus is still in there. But I've come to appreciate a lot of different ideologies from all over the world, and I think they all have something to lend. And my thing was primarily since he had his grandmother had a thing with Jesus, and he had to ask that question of, we're so faithful and we prayed so much. Why was life so difficult? And once he could get past that place, then he could get to the larger idea of the mission that he went on and ended up finding Anansi.
Great character, which I'm so happy to see him bridging over in that issue of Nita Hawes the way. So I was curious, like, what is it about him as a character? I mean, first of all, very charismatic, exciting character anytime he's on the page.
Shouts out American Gods, too.
There you go.
Someone here wrote it. I don't know.
Yes.
What was it about him that sort of was a wonderful religious umbrella for these 2 series almost?
I felt like I can't escape the fact that I wrote for the character on American Gods, and I have a great friendship with Orlando Jones and a great appreciation for Orlando Jones. And I wasn't done. Yes, I wasn't done with the character when I ended my time with the show. That I always wanted, in American Gods, he wasn't always featured. He would pop up in a couple of episodes, and then they would focus on Mr. Wednesday or whoever else, was Shadow, and that the main story. And I had a lot more that I wanted to say with him, and he was unique in the sense that most gods think like gods. And whether in comic books and mythology or whatever, they say, I'm a god. And they come in with their bravado, from the beginning. But Anansi was like, you treat all of these other gods differently. And one of the things that I do is I bet if I look like Brad Pitt, or I bet if this was happening, and no one looks at him like a god because he's wearing Jordans and he has a haircut, he's a kid. I went for a younger god thing because if I was a god, would I really want to be an old man? I would want to be younger. I'd be 25. I'd be 25 forever. And, there's so many boxes that he checked for me that in this dark lore and these dark stories that I'm telling, inject some humor into it, perspective in a different type of way. If I was a god and I had all of that power, I probably wouldn't be so serious. It's like I wouldn't look at life in a serious way because I understand it. Again, that perspective thing. I wouldn't look at it like someone who was struggling to make ends meet or was having relationship problems or whatever the problem may be, because I'm a god. I can go anywhere. I'm not going to die. I don't need money. I have worship.
Less immediacy, right?
Yeah, fewer consequences.
Exactly. So why would I be depressed? If anything, the only thing that would bother me is people don't acknowledge my godness. That's really the only thing. Yes. Well, yes. Except he's not a god. He shouldn't be alive.
He just thinks he is.
Yes. Yes. So, that was basically the impetus for it and all of that.
So should we should get some winning time discussion here? I kind of
sure. I've been winning time all day. So
you mentioned like writing like for a huge cast like the X-Men or whatever, but talk about a cast of characters. That era of Laker fan. Like, were you a fan of that era of Lakers, or were you like?
I was a Dr. J fan more than I was a Philadelphia 76er fan, more than a Laker fan, and the 76ers always ended up playing the Lakers in the championship and beating them, except for 1983. I was a fan of the era. It was when sort of basketball came into my consciousness.
Same for me, yeah.
As a young person, it's sort of when I became a fan. I remember it was a kid who had a TV in his garage, and I just moved to a new neighborhood, and I went to the basketball court and he played, and he liked me, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come over to my house and watch the game?" And I don't think I'd ever watched a basketball game before, and it was the Lakers playing. And from that point on, I was like, oh, okay, this thing comes on TV too. It's not just on the playground. And from that point on, that was sort of my relationship with basketball. This got me.
Also, during that time, though, like basketball wasn't on TV that often, not live. Like,
and it was tape delayed. Yeah, the championship was tape delayed when the 76ers played the Trailblazers. I remember having to stay up. I couldn't watch the sports report because the reporter would say who won.
Right.
Because I had to watch the game, and the game came on at 11:30, even though it was 4 hours delayed. So yeah, that was basketball. Until Magic and Bird. When Magic and Bird came, then everything changed.
Is there a character in this that will be surprised by stories about them revealed in it, or?
That's a good question. I think there are virtually everything we do comes from Jeff Pearlman's book, Showtime, or the book that the person wrote. Like virtually everybody wrote a book.
Right.
And so a lot of research went into how we did this. We didn't just cobble it together and one-dimensional portrayals. I think the thing I'm proudest of and the thing we sort of highlight is there's what you know and then there's what you didn't know. And so there's a running track of three-dimensional characters. We see them doing the verb of what they do. The players play, the coaches coach, the GM, management, the owner. They do what they do, but they have they're using basketball to fill some kind of void in their lives. There's something that basketball gives them that is connecting to some validation about life for a reason. Everybody has a reason to be on screen and go through what they're going through. So some of the moments in that great Adam McKay tone, you can have a moment that's incredibly dramatic and serious, and you can have a comedic moment in the next scene. Like there is no, it's hard to say dramedy or what exactly this is, because you could have a socially relevant poignant moment, and then you could have a hilarious locker room moment. It's
which makes it real, right?
Yeah, I think the only drawback to this entire show, and I hate to say this publicly, is I'm a character in the show and I'm acting in the show.
Uh-oh.
So I may actually bring the show down. For some reason, they have kept me in, and I think I'm in 5 episodes, 5 or 6 episodes.
Give us
So,
can you do like a theater?
well, I have a scene with the great Adrian Brody.
Pat Riley,
and it's actually my first scene in the show, and his first scene in the show as well. Thank you very much. But in all seriousness, it's a lot of fun. Most fun I've ever had, most work I've ever done. But if you're going to appreciate doing something well, it takes effort and it takes time. And we've been at this for almost 4 years because we started back when I was doing Wu-Tang. I would do Wu-Tang when I was in New York, and Max Bornstein, the other EP showrunner of the show, he was doing his movie Worth with Michael Keaton. That's on Netflix right now. And I was doing Wu-Tang and American Saga, and he would work Monday through Friday. I was working Monday through Friday, and then we would meet on the weekends and we start talking about the show along with Jim Hecht and Rebecca Bertucci. And we would get together and we would work all weekend long, and then we'd go back to our other gigs. And then when those gigs were over, we'd come to LA and start to work on the show for real. And then COVID hit. We shot the pilot right before COVID began. And so we were in a holding pattern, and we didn't actually do the rest and immediately, but we got an opportunity to write the rest of the scripts and go over them again and again and again and again and again until, they were scripts that we were pretty proud of. And so that was sort of the history of how we got to this point. And then when things sort of slowed down and there was an infrastructure as to how to deal with COVID and shoot at the same time, testing every morning and then gatekeeping, coming in an hour early, taking a test, making sure you weren't positive, and then going on the set and doing our jobs and that type of thing. So, yeah.
Was there a character when you got into writing these characters who are real people that you've seen on TV or that you've heard interviews for, you've read their books? Was there a character you really enjoyed writing that was just kind of a lot of fun?
I think tie between Magic Johnson, who's played by Quincy Isaiah and Crosby, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was played by Solomon Hughes. And throughout this process, those guys, I got really close to those guys, and we're like brothers. And being able to write for them, and Wood Harris, who plays Spencer Haywood as well. Really enjoyed writing for those guys and really enjoyed interacting and producing for those guys and all of that. But everybody's great. Adrian's great.
John C. Reilly. I mean,
John C. Reilly as well. John C. as well. Sally Field.
Yeah.
Jason Clarke is fantastic as Jerry West. Paul West, and Tracy Letts, who plays Jack McCann. Everybody's
the cast
great.
Is amazing.
Yeah, everybody's incredible. Everybody's great, and just an honor to be a part of it, and just always trying to do better, bigger, better stuff, and be a part of it. And I can't wait for folks to see it. We're what's the day? The 5th, so we're like a month away. So
okay, yeah. I was gonna say when and where.
Yeah,
HBO.
HBO first, and then HBO Max right afterwards.
Excellent.
I'd be wrong in not asking any updates on the Killadelphia show.
No. Well, yes. No, you're not wrong for asking that question. We have a big name attached to play James Sangster. Pilot is done. The Bible is done. The script is out to
Idris Elba.
A director I can't say. I can't even make a face to give it away. We're out to directors now to put a package together.
That's great.
So
that's good progress.
Jose, and we have a Jose we're out to. We have a Jimmy we're out to. And I'm just in a lot of conversations every couple of weeks with folks.
That's exciting.
Telling them, trying to put this package together and seeing what we can do.
That's fantastic.
Nita to me seems like the easy sell to a network.
There's never an easy sell. There's never.
Well, at least creature of the week.
Yeah. If Regina King decides to like come on and be that person, then it's an easy sell. But in short of that, in lieu of that, that's it's tough. Everything's tough because you have so much television being made right now. And so many features, quite frankly, being made right now that it's really, really difficult to get something through.
Sure.
Back to the book, I have to say, James Sangster Sr., when they're breaking in the house, he's got some of my favorite stuff with, hey, y'all fucking up my house.
Yeah, I paid my mortgage. I paid 30 years it took me to pay for this house, and vampires just fucking up the carpets.
Yeah, he's like,
windows
Jimmy
and
Jr.
shit.
He's like, you're all right. The fuck it
So
looked
good.
like vampires tearing up my house. We're getting our asses kicked all the while Seesaw's lying on the goddamn floor taking a nap.
Yes, it's would be angry. He's supposed to be strong and powerful, and look at what's happening here. This is bullshit.
He has some great or when Anansi leaves and he's like, this is why I'm sticking with Jesus. Like,
Yes, exactly. You never have this problem with Jesus. Jesus
it's
is
so
quiet.
good.
Yes, Jesus is quiet.
He's great. And then he's like, yeah, wait till I come to your house and fuck it all up.
Yes.
See what happens. I start acting a fool.
Yes.
And I love this turn in James Sr. where he's kind of funny.
Yes. Needed to lighten him up a little bit.
But also, the scene here, it ripped a scar in me of therapy and trauma when he's starting to talk about the trauma through his family from son to son.
Yes, generational.
Yes, and that ripped me apart because I've gone into therapy for issues with my father, and just it took him dying for him to.
Happy for you. I'm glad you made that move. I think it's a move that I'm doing the same. Not necessarily just because of my father, but because of history. I think everyone who has had that type of experience and is hurting, you should go to therapy. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing and can empower you and make you a better human being and can make your life better. Whoever you are, whatever thing that you're using to substitute for your trauma, I use food. I've had a myriad of issues, comic books as well. I told Earth 2 Comics, Carr, here in LA, I'm like every Wednesday I come here. I don't even read these things sometimes, but I'm addicted to coming on Wednesday and buying $40 or however many. And if I find something attached to my childhood, I'm going to buy it, and it could be $100, and I'm not reading it either. But I can show you. I can right here. This is from 2 weeks ago. Still in the bag. Hasn't opened. I could reach.
What'd you get? Can you show us what you got?
I can show you. Hold on.
This makes me feel so much better about my
to
be read file.
Superboy and Legion of Superheroes.
Oh.
All the Mike Rell issues. Why did I buy? Just because I was on eBay at the time. And you know what? I've got at least 3 copies of each.
Well, you've got all the greatest Swamp Things.
I just don't know where they are. And he says you want to see what did I get?
What'd you get?
Was this the expensive week? Yep. I got
What was the expensive week for you? I want to know.
I got the Swamp Thing #2
and
with
Batman.
And that I got a
look at you. You're like,
it gets better. I got Tales from Suspense #41.
Oh my gosh.
The third Iron Man, as you see. I got
expensive at all.
I don't know why I got this.
God, you have fuck you money.
This Justice League
money.
#3 thing.
Ooh, Shazam.
Yes, fighting Batman. I got Silver Surfer #16.
Ooh, is that Mephisto?
Yes, it is Mephisto.
Nice.
Mephisto wins at last, even though he actually doesn't.
Oh.
Spoiler alert! If you were hold on, you ready?
Yeah.
The Incredible Hulk #3.
Oh, second Green Hulk.
There you go. All right, 12
Wow.
cents. Didn't
Wow.
cost me 12 cents. First Elektra of Daredevil.
Great.
I had that
book.
CGC
Frank Miller.
9.8.
Yep,
I
there you
sold
go.
it when I lost my job.
Saga Chapter 1. First place.
Oh,
This was an expensive week. I was in a,
Yeah.
I was in a place. First, John Constantine, Swamp Thing.
Also expensive.
Yes. This was an expensive
This is the
week.
best
This was an
unboxing I've
expensive
ever
week.
seen.
yeah.
And again, Neil Adams' first classic issue of The Witching Hour.
Oh,
Wow, that's a beauty.
And there you go. And it's number one. And then what else did I get? Back Issue magazine and Alter Ego about Black heroes. And
Great pickups.
To be
Cruel
fair,
Summer
Oh,
by
Ed
Brubaker and
Brubaker and
Sid
Phillips
Wiener.
is always a good choice.
Yes. So
to
there
be
you go.
fair,
Hope by
Most of
them
those-
was
most of those books that you picked up aren't necessarily, in my opinion, like reading books. Like
No, they're not. And I also
No,
got this Neil Adams Avengers.
Ooh, king size.
Yeah, number 93. No, this isn't the king size. It's just number 93. When Neil did his run up to like 99 or something, then
wasn't George Perez right after. Then
he
followed
was
by
in the
Byrne?
120s, I think, because Barry Windsor Smith did 100 and 101. Not all of the good stuff at Golden Apple. But yeah. What else do I have? Oh,
Great stuff.
You go to Golden Apple is your shop there in LA?
sometimes Earth 2, but I go to Golden Apple. And then I've got a box of Nitas. I got a whole bunch of Nitas.
Dude, those
Oh, wow.
Saturday evening post covers are so good.
And
That
So
one
yeah, there you
particular
go.
was great.
that's stick these underneath here. Never to be seen again. And there's an Army of Darkness for you. And that's about it on my desk. Oh, well, here's the Stephen King catalog. And this is important, 2022, because there's an interview with me when I worked on the Green Mile, standing in for John Coffey, and a picture with me and Stephen King. And we go that way. And there you go. Yeah, interview with Rodney Barnes. I'm Rodney Barnes. And there you go. So you
That's
basically
awesome.
see my desk.
Also, if you want to hear Rodney wax poetic about something he loves, he is on the commentary for the Kolchak Night Stalker.
I am. Yes.
Blu-ray that just came out. You can pick it up on Amazon for about $50. It was originally retailing for about almost $100.
Yes.
Like Rodney waxes poetic about this series. It is one of his favorites, and
That's
it's
funny.
a property you're still trying to pick up, right?
Yes. Konstantin Nazar hooked that up because he knows I was a huge fan, and I really appreciated that because I love the series. Everybody who knows me knows how much I love the series and love the character. And I'm actually writing in the 50th anniversary anthology. I'm doing a story in there for Kolchak, and can't wait till that comes out. Can't wait to finish the story. And
That's
yeah.
cool.
So yeah.
Back to the book. So Thomas Jefferson getting pissed off about Jupiter destroying his family.
Yes.
His indignation is just amazing.
Yes, it's fascinating. He's like, he sold my children. He's like, that was over 200 years ago. They've died and moved on. You're still angry? Why?
Yep.
It's just fascinating. And then they bro hug. Like,
Well, yes, and that was, like I said, that was unexpected, but he was in a place where, one, I like the fact that it was unexpected because you thought he was going to do the other thing. 'Cause
Right.
that
Oh,
was
yeah.
the direction it was going in. But again, it's sort of like a bad relationship when all you remember is the good stuff, and then you get back with the person and you remember, this is why we aren't together. See, you remember? And they've had a couple hundred years apart from each other, and there you go.
this was kind of the spiritual issue because Anansi and Tevin are going back and forth. He's like, look, I was just here on my tree sunning myself. And then you come up in
I'm a
here.
spider, and then you come and bother my spiderisms, and you come in with this stuff, and I've got to go back to America and deal with those crazy nuts. And so, yeah.
I do love this one little part where he's just like, when I went to hell, you know what they didn't have? He's like, ice water. He's like, no, windows, because it gave you hope.
Exactly. You can't see past your pain. When you're hurting and it's a prison when you can only see yourself. You can't see hope for a better day. You can't see the sun.
Thanks, Robert.
Anansi is just so amazing. Like, and I can tell you had fun writing him because one, he's mad. He's like, they call me a trickster god. I'm like the god of stories. Like, I don't like being called a trickster, but yet I will go into the hood and throw dice.
Well, yes. I mean, you gotta relate to the people. You got to meet the people where they are. That's what Jesus used to do. He didn't hang out with just the elites. He went down to the club in the gambling hall. They called it in the Bible, they were gambling, but it was the casino.
But I also do love that he jumps in the house. Is like, nice house, but goddamn, y'all need some pest control.
It's very true. It's a lot of vermin. Those vampires are vermin.
I do love that. And he's like, I don't know which of these fang people I got to get rid of. And as soon as he sees Tom, he's like, you sent that motherfucker to the longest level of hell.
I love the way it's drawn with the finger right there, like that one. You do those, you do that.
And he's like, we good with them.
Oh,
so
Jason.
good.
And Toppy, like, again, after seeing his backstory, you know where his anger comes from.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's just, you've had years to work it out, but you still haven't.
Well, if you haven't worked it out, you haven't worked it out. It doesn't time doesn't necessarily equal healing. You have to actively go about doing something. And Toppy hasn't done anything, other than allow his anger to fester, which in the times of my life that I've allowed anger to overcome, my personality, and I want to get it out. You get that momentary burst of, whoo, that felt good. I called that person a name, or I punched a wall, or I did something. Immediately, I regret it. Immediately. It's like you get a moment. It's like, whenever I eat bad things, from here to here, it tastes great, but then you get a stomach ache or you feel bad or whatever. But that momentary sensation that gives you that burst that you're looking for,
the high.
The high. That
like serotonin.
Yeah, whatever it is, it doesn't last very long. That's the reason why you got to get high again. So, yeah, there's that.
James also has the thing where, like, Jimmy's like, I don't know, I'm a screw up. And Anansi's like, you'd make a horrible salesman. And James Sr.'s like, boy, if we didn't have company, I'd pop you in the back of the head right now.
Yeah, they're still father and son. And
yeah.
My son, I would hit him. I would just hit him mercifully in front of the company. There weren't laws against that thing. I would beat him. I would beat him unmercifully.
It became almost Fred Sanford with Lamont, you big dummy.
That's how I pitched the series to Jason one night. Dracula meets Hamilton meets Sanford and Son. So.
The heartbreaking part were the second time that Anansi came to the U.S. with the boy with his dog burned to death. Oh,
yes, and the fire and
oh man, and how that stuck with him, and being a god that would
under the jokes, there's some substance there. Under all of that stuff, there's still the understanding of responsibility, the responsibilities that come with a God. So you could be a benevolent God, but if you're an empathetic one, I think you're even stronger.
Yeah, because he cuts through all their baloney, right?
Yeah.
He calls them all. He's like, okay, I'm gonna come back to you later. I know you.
Yeah.
Like, I get you. He's instantly like breaking them all down, and because he's able to cut through all of it, that's very funny. But it means it's all coming from a place of truth, right?
Exactly.
The back and forth between Thomas and Abigail is fascinating. She's like, I should be president. He's like, you have no political experience. She's like, I raised a family of politicians, including a son that served 2 terms. And he's like, oh, the ambitious first lady. She's like, the bitch that will rip off your head in the blink of an eye. And he's like, yeah, like maybe, okay.
It's like, I think with Abigail, it's sort of like old people. if you ever talk to old people, they don't. I had a conversation with Norman Lear a few years ago. I think back when I was doing vinyl, he came into our room to do research for the era. And he really only wanted to talk about what he wanted to talk about, because at that age, you don't have to suffer fools, and you really don't have to talk about what you don't have the bandwidth to talk about anything other than, I don't want to hear your fucking bitching and belly aching and any
so
of that.
true.
I really want to just deal with, because I had to walk out here. I had to walk from my car, or the car they brought me in. I had to come in here. I could be home on the couch, but I'm talking to you. So listen to what I got to say, and then I'll leave. And if you say something stupid, I'm going to tell you it was stupid. And I think, you're dealing with people who are hundreds of years old and have experience in being who they are, so they don't suffer. Abigail certainly doesn't suffer fools.
I also like that while James Sr. is talking about trauma, Jimmy Jr. is doing the spiritual journey of fighting his dark self, basically. Yeah. And of course, Tevin's played $20 on him against Anansi that he'll make it through.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this is one of those Jason pages that I think is,
God, just wild. So
I thought that was peak.
The way I described it, was him aligning himself with the cosmos, but also I was like, think 2001, A Space Odyssey, when you had them, screaming at the monkeys were screaming at the sky. And I went through Altered States, one of my favorite movies. And some of the imagery I was using to describe what I saw and what I was hoping the panel could express. And he always outdoes whatever I think. So that's why I'm going to kill him if he tries to leave.
I'm sure he would love to do Swamp Thing. I
would love for us to. Again, it's a Jason thing. Jason's becoming an elitist. I don't like Jason. I don't really like Jason.
You're codependent now.
I love Jason, but I don't like Jason. It's a very, very specific way of thinking.
Maybe DC has already greenlit Swamp Thing for you, and Jason's just holding it back. He's like, nope, I'm not going to do it.
I'm sure if Jason wanted to do it, we would have done it by now, because I do whatever Jason wants to do. He is clearly the man of the relationship. He's my patriarchal dynamic in our relationship. He's oppressive.
So when are you going to go Abigail on him?
Oh, it's coming. He knows it. Every time we have dinner, every time we talk, I threaten Jason. I say a lot of bad words, things I'm ashamed of. I'm not.
I need to ask him to come on and defend himself.
You should. He won't. He's not as open because he's Jason Sean Alec. He's got 3 names, so he's big time. Who am I? Why would he come on and talk with me? He needs a special show just for him. You know how you put that big square up where it was just me for a moment ago? That was Jason the whole time. It's just Jason seeing himself, a reflection of himself.
Anansi also, where he's like, hey, this vampire thing is bigger than just some presidents trying to get America straight. You are a pawn in the biggest game of chess in the universe. And that is such a foreboding thing of what's to come, especially the way
Arc 4.
Ends.
Arc 4 is that's the beginning of answers. That's where we start to turn. That's where, we start to move in a direction of why did we go on this journey? What was all of this about?
Well, and I think the perfect linchpin to something like that was the character reveal at the end of this trade, because I saw the Crucible in high school. My high school performed the Crucible, and it was incredible. And to see that as a kid, it's such an amazing moment in history to be given life in a play, and then to see Tituba come here, roll in at the last minute. You're just like, oh my gosh, what a great birth of our nation and kind of character to then give a whole new perspective.
Also, the way you start this trade, the last issue, with just John just kind of contemplating, is like, guilt is such a powerful emotion, and he's going through it again. And
John has a conscience. John has a conscience. Yes. John wants to be a good man. He wants to be. Is he? I don't know. But he wants to be a good man.
I think everybody in their own way thinks they're right. And that's
John, yes, but I think John is beginning to question that in himself. Like, because he died, he had the opportunity to be born again. I think you mentioned it earlier in the conversation that he's at a place where it's like, okay, um, maybe I was wrong. Now, here's the problem with that. It's one thing to know you're wrong. It's another thing to do something about it in the road back to healthy thinking and healthy behavior. It's not always an easy thing to do. I think an epiphany is an epiphany, but okay, now what do I do with this information? I don't have any of the muscles of healthy thinking. So I'm going to resort back to old habits because it's really what I know. It's how I define myself. Ego doesn't disappear because you go, oh shit, I got an ego. It goes away by humility. And that's an uncomfortable thing for someone who doesn't understand what humility is and doesn't really give a shit about other people unless they're worshiping them.
I remember, it's funny you say it because it reminds me of a conversation I heard Cameron Crowe have about Jerry Maguire, where he's like, I wanted to start a movie where a lot of like 80s romantic comedies ended, where the hero like has their epiphany and then the credits roll. I wanted them to have the epiphany and have to suffer changing habits because that's way more interesting.
And it's way more difficult. It's like I said in one of the interviews, I think for Winning Time, that one of the things I'm proudest of is that the way a lot of television shows and movies deal with racism is there's an event, there's a singular conclusion of the cops come in or something happens, the bad guy goes away, there's people hug at the end, and that's sort of the end of that event, and the credits come up. And racism as trauma, sticks with you, stays with you just like any other trauma. Your self-esteem, your self-worth, your ability to see yourself as valuable. And, we've got generations and generations of people that trauma has been passed down and passed down and passed down. And also, in order to enslave people, you have to look at them as less than people. You have to convince them that they're less than people. And because you turn the switch off and say, okay, you're not slaves anymore, that doesn't mean that immediately these people, even if they're free, they still are dealing with the mind job that's been done on them over the course of that. And they pass that down to their children, who pass that down to their children,
how could they
pass
not?
that down to their children. And this isn't a disparaging thing for them. They've been victimized. But how it normalizes when dysfunction becomes function, I think it becomes very, very difficult to operate normal, healthy human behavior, constructs, family, interpersonal relationships. Your entertainment becomes skewed because you come from dysfunction and trauma. So your entertainment becomes dysfunctional and traumatic in the way that it manifests itself. And so, how do you course correct all of that when you've got hundreds of years on top of it? I don't know. But to be able to talk about it when by and large, most people don't, we have a set way that we talk about these things. I think my responsibility as a writer and what I try to accomplish is to talk about these things in a way, again, not to judge them, because everybody's got their own path and their own way to healing and their own way to dealing with life. But if you just present the subject matter and hopefully people take away what they take away from it, you've got an opportunity to have to do work that can hopefully inspire someone to look at situations differently. That's the point behind all of this. It's not to disparage political figures. It's not to use them, just as kind of a marketing tool to say, oh, who's coming next? What historical figure is coming next? It's always to say that that person has a purpose narratively, but they also have a purpose in talking about other subject matter from a different point of view. And so, it's probably the thing that I've written that's closest to how I see the world and how I see history and my own journey and all of that stuff. So, yeah.
Are you James Sangster Sr. in this? Because when he meets a god, he's not impressed.
I'm James, I'm Jimmy, I'm Seesaw, I'm Abigail, I'm all of these people.
I just love this fact. Anansi's like, in the short time I've come to respect you guys, yay.
It's all of I think the only way I can write a character is if I understand why that character is doing what they're doing. Then I'm just doing plot. Then I may as well be, I'm a hack at that point. I'm just writing because there's a story to be told. I have to understand what's under that story, and I have to understand it from a place of having endured some of it. That's all I got.
Please tell me that part of maybe like your Substack like subscription or newsletter is like, does it involve any of the writing process? Or because I would love to get like a Rodney Barnes master class in how to write.
It will. I mean, right now, when I've been doing this for a few months and it's new, and a lot of people don't even know what a Substack is or how it operates or what it does. So the first thing you have to do is give people a reason to subscribe beyond the me of it all. You have to entertain them. So Elysium Gardens continues in real time for back then. Johnny Gatlin, who is a gunfighter who is in hell and working for Corson the Demon. 20 Degrees Past Rigor, which is the zombie story from the Waters of Flint, and The Butcher of Black Bottom. Those 3 stories kind of run, 4 stories run at the same time on Substack. And then with Image, there's Killadelphia, there's Nita Hawes' Nightmare Blog. The Monarch would be coming. I'm cheating right now. I just got a new subscriber.
Hey,
thank you. And the Zombie Love books, Blackula, Florence and Normandy, Crownsville, and Tales from the Crypt. The Dynamite books, Army of Darkness, James Bond, and a new one to come. They'll probably announce that next week. And Marvel, I already did IG-88.
Cloak and Dagger, you did?
I did Cloak and Dagger. I have another Star Wars book coming. And I have another superhero Marvel book coming soon.
That's
look
awesome.
in your eyes and see if I can read.
And Incredible Story Arc 3, probably my last Quincredible, will be wrapped up soon. And that's it. That's all for comic books.
That's
TV.
it? That's all? Nothing? It's hard to get.
TV, movies. This is when my anxiety grows because I see all the work I'm not doing. Right? Everything that's overdue right now is all I see. And after I get off here, I have to go back to work. I have winning time stuff to do. So yeah.
I also liked as they're walking, like I just in my head we're hearing the Warriors come out and play. Yes. They're walking down the street and John's like, oh, it reminds me of something I used to say to Thomas Jefferson, just because it's true doesn't mean you have to say it. And he's like, what was his response? Fuck you, John. He's like, I'd like to meet Thomas Jefferson. It's like, hold on 1 minute. You may
change your mind.
Yes.
Tituba is such a badass compared to how we saw her in the late 60s, early 70s. Jesus.
She's had time. I think once she went through her John Africa situation with Move, it sort of evolved her into having to be a badass. Again, you become a badass typically by having gone through something and how you deal with it. Some people go to one side, other people go to the other side. I think Tituba went to the other side.
And then we see Angela Davis and the rest of the werewolves come out. And yes. I liked how they're just not impressed. Like, yes. Tevin's like, oh, shit. And James is just like, well, all right, I'm feeling better about the shit.
He should. Got some power on this side now.
But literally, Toppy and Abigail are like, all right, I guess this is happening.
Yes. And it is happening. I can't give away what's going to happen, but it's happening.
Because it's next
No.
month, right? The next Killadelphia is coming out next month, I thought, right?
This
March?
month. This
Oh, is it
the
this
5th.
month?
Yeah,
Noir
23rd,
covers.
I think. Yeah. Noir covers. That's all Jason's idea. That's Jason Sean Alexander. I think I mentioned him.
Yes, I also do like that you shout out Carlos, your assistant,
I do.
and kind of say he has the easiest job.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he has the best life.
My interactions with him are always great. It's like, well, it's going to be like an hour and a half, but with Rodney, you never know, and he never replies to it.
Yeah, well, he tells me, he's like, do you really have that kind of time? Because this is due and that's due and this is due and you have to do this and you have to do that. And I'm like, yeah, all right, I got an hour and a half. Sure.
Well, here we are at 2 hours.
Yeah, I got a few more minutes. I got literally like 5 or 10 more minutes.
It's like almost midnight here.
Yeah.
Quick question about Nita Hawes. Was Howling Henry supposed to be a take on the Devil and Robert Johnson?
Close. He's sort of a mixture of a bunch of different folks that I'm fans of. I'm a fan of blues music. And, I took from a bunch of people. And I think Patrick did a good job of finding, the kind of a composite of blending different people.
You also did the Jeannie McFarlane thing of you got people who could almost do what Sean does.
Yeah.
Not quite as well as him, but it's close.
Yeah. Well, what's his name? Jason. What's his name? Jason was he picks all of these people. Anything that has to do with art, he'll text me, what do you want this to look like? And I'll say you. And he'll say, cool. And then art will come through. What do you think of this guy? And it'll be more, yes, it does. Because I'm paranoid, I'm neurotic. So I do a lot of books. But yeah, it's Jason. Jason is anything art-wise because he's sort of the creative director for the Zombie Love books, and for everything we do together, Jason sort of oversees art.
Again, Nita Hawes has been kind of refreshing because it's a different take, and I kind of do love, like, one of the first images I saw was that Cthulhu-like monster with all the tentacles coming out of its face. And the fact that it's Corson and he's not just ripping dicks anymore.
He's got more. There's a master plan. There's a master plan coming for him, and that'll be revealed in Arc 4 of Killadelphia.
And Anansi also, his appearance, and
that issue was so phenomenal. I
Thank
just
you.
geeked like crazy on that issue.
Thank you very much. People seem to like issue 4. It's a weird thing in comics that they'll hang with you for 3 issues, but if they don't get what they want by that 4th, they're on Twitter killing you. So
I think that's the rule with new books. You hang for 3 or 4 issues, or at least the first arc, and then
if it doesn't grab you, it's done. It's done. I tried to read this one, but I couldn't stay.
You're dead to me.
Yeah. Oh my god.
But then there's one that got better after the first arc, which Jen and I both agree with. Black Widow, after the first arc, actually got better.
The current run.
It beat me for the eyes.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it.
It got terrific. Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible. Sorry.
No. I love that book. I love all of it. It's no shade whatsoever. Just an observation.
I truly appreciate you coming on, talking with us about it.
Anytime.
Jen and I love having you on and talking with us.
I love talking to you guys. Next time, if Andrew's not here, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm already unavailable. I have to
be honest, Andrew kind of closed down his online comic store, and he's kind of been off in his own little area. I don't know. Like, I haven't talked to him very much. He showed up for our Dune live stream for a little bit, and I think that's the last.
It's not your fault, Rodney.
Please tell Andrew I said hello. I wish him well. And if he can join us the next time, that'd be great. If not, I understand. And I hope whatever he's doing, it's making him happy.
I will pass it on. But again, it's so great talking to you about this. And again, like last night, I was messaging John. I was like, I fucking hate Thomas Jefferson. I was like, hey, Lance Reddick should be doing this. I remember when this book first came out, I think Jen and I both kind of exchanged a text about like Thomas Jefferson. And again, of course, he would be pompous, but to be in politics, to have been president, especially one of the first three, yeah, you would be 100% like ego driven.
Have to be.
But I do love the fact that he's looking back on things going, I could have been wrong, but I mean, look around.
Yeah, I did the best I could.
Yeah, where John Adams, at least he's looking going, I could have done this. I could have done that. He's not really saying he could have made it better, but he's at least acknowledging he was wrong. And I think that's the huge two differences. And even in this, where Thomas Jefferson's like, well, I was smarter than him.
Yes.
He constantly has to be one better.
Always.
Anything else we should be on the lookout for coming out before we wrap things up?
No, I think I told you guys everything. Winning Time in a month, all the different books. Nita should be wrapping up soon. 2 more issues, I believe. And then we'll take a month break, and then we'll be back for volume 2 or story arc 2 of Nita, and Killadelphia coming soon. Got everything.
Awesome.
And pick it up. Again, pick up the trades. If you're just coming here for Nita, like, check out for the historical stuff for Killadelphia. Yes, it's very dude heavy, but there is a little bit of information you can learn and perspective, as Rodney has said. Like, everybody thinks they're the good guy, which is the weird part.
Yep.
Nobody thinks they're wrong. Abigail thinks she's right. Toppy thinks he's right for his own reasons.
Yes.
And I think that's what makes it interesting, because, again, there's a lot of hubris. I mean, what really got John started? He went to see Hamilton, and it pissed him off the way he was portrayed. Which, true. How many times have you seen it, Rodney? Not counting Disney
26.
So good.
Can't wait to see it again.
Masterpiece.
And you're telling us that you feel like you're not a good actor. I bet that you can sing every single one of those songs.
Oh, shit. Yeah. That's different. That's more because I'm in a car by myself, and I know all of it. I'm in a room where it happened. All of that. I know every one.
You're on the Winning Time after show also?
I am.
Yeah.
Not every after one. I do episode 2, episode 5, episode 7, and episode 9. I am on the after show for it. But I do the podcast, the Winning Time podcast, that will come after the show as well. So I do.
Oh, they were going all in on this with podcast after shows.
Yeah, I host that, and so there you go.
I will be watching. I can't imagine this is going to ruin anybody's friendships like Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan's has from The Last Dance.
Not at all.
They will not talk anymore because of that.
Not at all.
Again, thank you so much for coming on. And
you're very welcome.
Please check out his Substack. Go subscribe, hit a tier, and pick up these trades. And Nita Hawes, if you are looking for something kind of fresh with a female protagonist, and I recommend Because of Anansi and the Saturday Evening Post covers by Jason. I know you don't want to hype him up any more than he already is. And get his ego. We got to start a neg campaign against him where he'll stay with you.
I'm all for it.
I'm going to start doing hashtag Sean Alexander for Swamp Thing. I'm going to make it happen.
DC Comics, if anybody for God's sakes is watching, I've seen this Green Hell limited series that is out there.
Mm-hmm.
Would you give Rodney like a black label, one of those magazine size ones?
I would be very happy with that.
And again, like, he's going to have something original, and I'm hoping, as we've said, the Alan Moore curse. Although you doing Constantine with the way you've written Tevin could be interesting. I feel like you could have an interesting take on him.
I'll take whatever they bring.
So thank you, everybody, and go make sure to like, subscribe, and of course follow Rodney on Instagram, because you will start seeing stuff publicized that his publicist will get angry about.
This is true. You never know what to do. Thank you
so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take it easy.